Welcome to Life and Love in the Q, a podcast for the LGBTQIA2S plus community, those who support them, and those who just want to learn more.
Together we share the stories and the science of the space and grace to live life in full color.
I'm Jillian Abbey, proud lesbian and mother, Hay House author, queer blogger, and TikTok something or other.
And I'm Treisha Peterson. I'm an LGBTQ ally, proud mom of 6, professor and researcher of identity and the social narratives that impact the way we live and love.
So open your mind, open your heart, and welcome to Life and Love in the Q.
Welcome to this, what should be a very interesting episode of Life and Love in the Q, Dating Edition. This is not a dating show. We are not playing matchmaker right now, but I sure do get a whole lot of questions about what it's like to date midlife, what it's like to date when you've come out as queer. And so there's a lot of things I wanted to talk about. It may be a little scattered. There's a lot of things I feel like need to be said though.
All right. I'm excited to have you lead this because I am 100% in the dark, intimidated, and pretty confident that I will never date.
Well, thank you so much for saying that, because actually that's something that I hear so regularly across the message boards of these different late in life lesbian groups, women who are ending their relationships, generally a very long-term relationship or marriage with their spouse, and entering the dating world in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. I think there was even a 70-year-old one time, and it was like, dang, girl, get it. Anyways, it's hard. So my heart is different than other people's hearts in some way, and I will talk about that. But when we come into the dating world later in life, we are a very different person than when we were initially starting our dating journey. We bring a lot of different things to the table. And I think that the goals maybe of why we're dating and what we're looking for change a lot from, dating in our teens, obviously, and 20s to now we're divorced and we, have a kind of a different perspective and outlook on life. And so what we're looking for in a partner, how we want to relate to them and the role they play in our lives may be very different. And that throws a lot of people off. And so there's a lot of just general fear around dating and putting oneself out there.
So I love all of that. But one of the things that I'm going to be kind of curious about as we're talking is I almost wonder if how we date is really informed by how we divorced. So I'm going to kind of make the assumption, and I know it's not true for everybody, but I'm making the assumption that if you're coming into the dating world, and we're talking about it in the context you and I are going to talk about it, we're probably talking about people who have been in long-term relationships and divorced or separated from those long-term relationships versus people maybe who are dating in their midlife that have never married. Because I would guess that that's a very, very different ballgame. But I wonder if how we date is really impacted by how we divorced.
It is fast. And the circumstances around our divorce. Like, I will speak to my own experience because I know a little bit about it. In my own experience, I remember once I had come out to my now ex-husband, I was actually kind of excited and anxious to get into the dating world because it was a completely new experience for me. Like, I had never dated a woman. I had never really come close to anything that would approximate a date with a woman. And so I was excited to explore that part of my identity and dive into that world. And at the same time, I was coming out of what generally was a happy marriage. Like, we enjoyed being together. There wasn't a lot of conflict. There wasn't abuse. There wasn't, it was good. And so I was optimistic about being in relationship, coming out of my relationship, because it's like, well, that was a good one, but wrong gender. I was hopeful that I could find a same kind of happy, solid relationship again in the future. At the same time, and so this is what I think makes my dating experience maybe a little unique from other people, is I had almost zero dating experience, period, in my life. In my book, I talk about the very few boyfriends that I had that didn't ever last over like 2 weeks. And then my ex-husband was really my first and only serious relationship in my life. It was like one and done.
And you guys, if I remember though from your book, you were really good friends.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like you really, I can't remember if you started as friends and then it turned romantic, or you just like you meshed friendship and romance very quickly together.
We lived on the same floor of our dorm in college, and my mom saw him during parents' weekend, and she said, "Why don't you go out with that boy?" And, he was cute and really nice and very respectful to my mom. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, he's great. People love him. He had a magnetic personality. And so we just loved hanging out together. Like, he was awesome. And so, yeah, it didn't take that much time before we started dating. But I do remember early on, even in the dating process, I came home from college for a break, and my mom said, "How's it going?" And I said, "It's great. We enjoy our time together, and he gives me my space when I need it." And she said, "Well, this will never work out. Like, you're in the brand new phase of your relationship. Nobody says, 'I want space' right now." Indicator number one. He was like the breadcrumbs to queerness that maybe I should have picked up on along the way. But he and I were both very inexperienced to dating. And so it was a very slow pace, and we just enjoyed each other's company. And that's why I think it was so interesting diving into dating at, 39 years old, 40 years old, because it's just different. Like, there are people who I didn't realize, and I should have. Again, obviously it's out there. We see it on TV, and like, there are people who just want to have sex. There are people who want to date, but they date a lot of people at once. Very, very casual relationships. And then, and something that is more frequent in the lesbian community is you go on one date, you realize this is my soulmate, you fall madly in love. Date 2 lasts for 8 years. As you cohabitate together. Like, it's a very quick bonding and connection between women loving women relationships in general. I mean, that is the stereotype around it. They're like, "Where's the second date?" U-Haul, because you're going to move together. I think maybe sometimes that's why there is a lot of fear around it though too, because we bring different things in to dating when we're older. And I think maybe those things would seem like obvious red flags in younger years. And I know I see a lot of people now are like, "This is a red flag. That's a red flag. That's a red flag." But the reality is, if you've been in a relationship for a very long time that you're coming out of, whether it was a challenging, hard, abusive marriage, or even it was a good marriage, but there was something fundamentally broken with it, you're bringing stuff to the next step. And actually, I do have some curiosity about that, because I don't remember if I mentioned this in the book or not, but basically I was like a walking, talking red flag.
Yeah. For Jen, I remember.
Jen, right. And then in hindsight, I'm like, wow, I am really lucky that she gave me a chance. But in my mind, I didn't really realize so much I was a red flag. And obviously we've worked out and worked through it, because we're several years into our relationship now and engaged, and, life is good. So I guess, can you share any perspective you have on like what makes a red flag in dating? What kind of baggage is okay for people to carry into a relationship? And where do we have to be a little bit more on guard of, maybe the timing is not right for a relationship here with this person?
I wished I had some, to be honest. I know for me, one of the things that's big on my mind personally, so I'm maybe 7 months out from my divorce, maybe 8. And to be honest, I did just sign up for a dating app, and I had it on my phone for all of 6 hours.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I feel really impressed with myself. I lasted 6 hours, and I think I had 30 different people who typed the interest thing. And I looked at them, and they were 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds. And I was like, people, have you not looked at my age? Like, I mean, I wrote my age here. And that's actually why I was wondering the question of, I wonder if it has to do with how you divorce. Because one of the things that I'm still kind of messing with in my own brain is, so we had a lot of chaos and conflict around the chaos, and kind of, I think we just talked about it. And I mentioned it a little bit in the panic and anxiety podcast, but when there's a lot of uncertainty, there is a lot of chaos. And if you don't at least kind of figure out how you're going to manage the uncertainty, there can just be a lot of really emotional dysregulation. So conflict, it's the same thing to me. If you have two people who are dysregulated and they're not seeing eye to eye, that's conflict. That's kind of how I don't hate my ex-husband. But so one of my red flags for myself, it's just for myself, is I really am going to have to get to this place where I can just forgive myself for that stage of my life before I dare get into a relationship with anybody else. Because I know that we bring that with us unless I'm not a believer that we're going to heal everything in this lifetime. I don't believe that we ever get to a point where we're perfectly healed people, but I do think that we can get to a point where we are aware people.
Yes. And I think that's the huge difference. Everybody still has a red flag.
Yes.
If we want to even call, for the sake of discussion, we'll just say everyone has something that needs to be healed or needs to be worked on. But it's but are you doing that? Do you even recognize this as something, a trait about you, an experience you've had that needs work? Or do you just shove that deep down into your pocket and you're like, I'll pull out that red flag scarf I made later?
Well, I think so many times we're looking at the other people. And I think that this is one of the things that pop psychology has done a disservice to us, is when you're looking at the concept of self-healing and doing self-work, the practice of self-work is all about the practice of you. So it's you noticing your own red flags, you noticing your own vulnerabilities, and then healing those vulnerabilities. But then we have these amazing people who are putting this information out on social media. And I love some of them. I mean, there's a couple that I follow that I love how they've simplified things for us. But what happens is it turns us all, I'm going to go there and I'm going to use the word, but it turns us all a little narcissistic. Then we're diagnosing everybody else around us. And we're saying, oh, I just read this great post on attachment theory. You have whatever.
Yes.
Avoidant attachment, or you have this kind of, and the work is in noticing our own red flags.
Right. Not, you're an Enneagram 2. This will never work out.
Yes. And so for Jen, that might have been what her superpower was, is she might have seen all of your red flags, but she knew that she could navigate those because I would love one of these days to chat with her. And what did she think about the fact that you still lived with Christian?
Me too. Well, I was going to say, let me back up and just to give everyone a clear picture of what my red flags were.
Yes.
So at the time that Jen and I went on our first date, I would think I was about 6 months out from having come out to my ex. I very loosely will say dated a friend of mine early on to confirm my sexual attraction. I went on some other dates and then was just about to delete the dating app. And then I found Jen and I was like, oh my gosh, she's my dream woman. We went on one date, and very early on in the date, she says, so did you divorce your husband? And I said, no, but we're starting the process. And she's like, okay. And then she said, so did he move out or did you move out? And I was like, he moved out to the upstairs bedroom. We were still under the same roof. And it's funny and interesting and kind of disturbing to me that at the time when I was putting myself out there to date other people, if I had met someone else and they were like, oh yeah, I'm still married and we still live under the same roof and we run a business together, I would have been like, darling, you have some ducks to get in a row before we go out for Thai food again. Maybe it was because Jen and I were already mid-date and she's like, well, I'm stuck with this one for now. Let's keep talking. But I remember we were standing by a fridge. She was making peanut butter toast because that's what you do on a first date. And she said something to the extent of, she's like, well, these situations can be complicated. And I was like, thank goodness for you. And realizing that, yes, technically we do not have the legal piece of paper that says we're divorced. We are not in any way together in a relationship. Yes. Are we both in the same household? Correct. We are not in the financial position right now where we can have two separate households. We were still trying to figure out how, I mean, I still wasn't fully out to people yet. So there were so many layers of complication, and just the fact that she could recognize that this is complicated, but you have a plan, you are making forward motion. I'm so grateful for that. And then also it put it back on me to realize that I felt like I was disrespecting her by not being fully ready and open to date. And so that further motivated me to like, listen, I owe it to her to be free and clear for the dating in this relationship. But yeah, on paper, anyone else, even myself, if I was reading this as somebody else's story, I would have been like, stay away, stay
Run
away.
for the hills.
She's not ready. And like I said, but in our situation, it worked out because
Yeah.
we changed.
Well, or that you had some level. So again, and it's probably just because it's where my mind and my heart is right now. But even though there was like this place where you were uncertain about what, like all of the ducks were not in a row.
No, the ducks were everywhere.
The ducks were everywhere, but there was still almost like a fun, like you had built the path that the ducks would line up in their row. It was just you were waiting for things to come together so you could actually put them on the row. Right. But the row had been built, which was divorce, moving on.
Yeah.
So the path, going back to the goals agency and pathways, the goal was divorce. The choice that you guys were making, the agency, was we're going to get divorced, but we're going to do it in a way that at least maintains some level of security for the kids, some level of financial security for both of us to be able to move on, and friendly co-parenting. Like, I don't know what they really were, but you kind of knew what the choices that you wanted to make were, and the path forward for you guys involved living together for a little bit longer. And so, I mean, it's funny because in some ways, like it looks like red flags when you just consider they're ducks with arrows on them. But then when you actually look at them as very conscious choices, that may have been to Jen, what she was like, oh yeah, that's complicated, but it's still very safe. Like I see safety here because I see the plan.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. And then the other part, and this is again, a little bit of a tangent, but that's what we do, is that so when Jen and I met on the dating app, the app said that she lived 17 miles away. And what I didn't realize is that the app determines
she's a little bit further than that, isn't she?
She's a little bit further than that. The app goes by the location of your phone, wherever you're at. And so she was in town for a conference when I swiped on her. And so when we started chatting very quickly, I realized that she actually lived 936.3 miles away in Pennsylvania. And, so U-hauling is one like lesbian dating trope, and long distance relationships are another. And so I had told myself, I'm not going to get into long distance dating. I'm not going to do it. Like, it'll never work out. Again, like there's no plan. It's just people do that to try and, I don't know, keep themselves from having to get close again in a relationship. I don't know. I made up lots of stories in my head at that point. But we had a great first date while she was in town before she had to get back on the airplane. And when she left, some of the last words I said to her is, we'll figure it out. I wanted to continue with her. And now in hindsight, us starting out in a long distance relationship was such a benefit because of the fact that I did have more things that I had to get in order. And I was still in the process of healing a lot and coming out a lot. And, there was a lot that I really had to resolve and work on. And so we were able to take everything at a much slower pace because of the distance between us. And so I just want to throw that out there too, because I do think there's a lot of people who, and myself included, kind of like poo-poo long distance relationships, or like, why would you get into one of those? And again, I think the long distance part maybe is a red flag if it's not the goal. If you're getting into a long distance relationship, but that's not your long-term goal to want to stay in one, but neither partner has a plan to be able to move towards the other, like you could potentially be setting yourself up for letdown down the road. And in the case of Jen and I, we had conversations very early on of, we are good with this long distance relationship now, but we both know we do not want to be in a long distance relationship the rest of our lives. And I said, I can't, I have the children. I made a promise to them and to their dad that we would stay in proximity until they were out of the house. And I said, so I am here. Does this still work for you? Yeah. So that's kind of where we're at. And, we are still working through our process of bringing her closer here. But in the meantime, sign up for all those airline credit cards, get all your miles. Frontier Airline Discount Den will be your best friend. But yeah, I mean, we're figuring out how to make it work, but it's still on our goals. And we're always working towards the eventual goal of being together in the same home all the time.
Well, and so as you keep on, I have a couple thoughts on all of it, but the first thought that I have is that it's a process. And we talked about that in the anxiety podcast episode. And we also talked about it in the extended of that anxiety a lot, that when we were talking about it as how it deals with depression during those transition stages. But sometimes it's just a process. And I think that as you're talking about tropes, the trope tends to be that there's a happily ever after. Like we step from one room to the next and it's just like this happy landing, like we stick the landing in our gymnastics routine. But really there's this whole stage of the process of things working out. And I think in the dating world, it's just maybe even just making friends with the fact that it's a process. Mm-hmm. And as you were talking about all the red flags, like the thought that just keeps coming to me is, I wonder if we're looking for red flags in other people, and we should be looking for our own red flags in that. How does my sense of safety or my sense of security or my sense of self get triggered when I hear this person talk about the fact that they're still living with their ex-husband, or the fact, like all of these things that we consider red flags? Is it one of those things? Are we looking for red flags in other people, or are we actually looking at our reaction to the other people? What is the red flag?
Right.
Is it them or us?
Who is sewing a red flag dress right now? Yeah.
So that's on my mind. And for me, like, again, I don't think I'm quite, for Treisha Peterson personally, I am just not quite sure that I understand enough of my own life to feel like I'm not one great big huge red flag. Like I would love to have somebody that I can call and go to the movies with, or go to a concert with, or somebody who maybe wants to go water skiing or whatever. But yeah, I don't know that I feel like I'm ready yet.
I think that's a hard thing too. I mean, and this was another topic I wanted to touch on, but there's one other challenge with dating as an adult, particular when you're coming out of another relationship, whether that is from divorce, whether you come out, whether your spouse has passed away.
Yeah.
So many people have so many opinions on when you should be allowed to start dating, when you're ready for it. And I had some very well-intentioned friends say to me, like, well, don't you think it's a little early? Because again, Jen's not the first person I dated. Like I came out to my spouse, and within a very short time after that, and, with having a discussion with him where I said, I feel like I need to confirm before I do anything else, like, that this is legitimate and true. Very quickly, I kind of got into a relationship with a friend who happened to be available at the same time. And it wasn't a solid relationship. There's a lot I learned from it. There was a lot of things I realized where it's like, wow, I don't want that in a relationship. But throughout the process, a lot of my friends would say, don't you think you need to work on yourself a little bit more before you do this? And at the same time, my mind was like, I have been waiting to date a woman for so long. Like I have waited my whole life for this. And now I'm finally in the position where I can. And you're saying, no, find yourself. And I'm like, I found myself. That's why I'm here. Like, that's why I'm in this position. And at the same time, they weren't entirely wrong. I still had work to do. In this case, it also goes back to what are your goals of dating? And originally when I came out and wanted to start dating, I just wanted to confirm that I was really as gay as I thought I was. Confirmed, done, super gay. I have a dear friend of mine whose wife passed away. And when she started dating again, a lot of people had opinions on it. And she said, well, when am I allowed to seek comfort again? When am I allowed to seek companionship again? yes, it was horrible and sad, but I have been mentally processing that end was coming in our relationship for years.
Yeah.
And it really, hearing that hit me hard, because I think it's like from an outside perspective, we can always look at someone else and think we know what may be the best thing for them or what the right thing to do is. But really, unless you are in that person's shoes and have gone through what they've gone through, sometimes we don't know. There's more pieces to the puzzle that we're not picking up on.
So I love actually that you brought that up, because it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, in that we live in a world that thinks that we have to give advice to one another.
Yeah.
We think we really do think that the relationship dynamics in our life, whether we're friends or we're parents or we're partners or we're coworkers, like we have come to this place, I think, in our society that we think that we're either there to solve one another's problems, or we're here to give people advice, or we're here to show them how wrong they are, like convince, like there's this belief that we are here that there's a give and a take in a conversation, relationship, or whatever. But the reality is that a lot of times we're just like, the best way to support one another is just to be there. It's not to solve someone's problems. It's not to give them advice. It's not to give them your opinions. And I think that what so often we forget is that when we're in these vulnerable places that dating is a huge vulnerability. Getting back into the dating game is a huge state of vulnerability. The last thing that we need actually is people to give us their opinions and their judgments on us, because we already probably are feeling them, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Creating a profile where really you are being judged and how you look in the pictures. And then in those brief little blurbs of what you can write about yourself. And then even just going on dates. And it's like, it's like you're on display. Like, we both want a relationship. We both want this to work. I hope you pick me. It's scary and vulnerable. And I don't know.
Yeah, not interested.
No.
I have a friend that I went to high school with that has reached out on social media a couple of times on direct messaging. And I've had a lot of fun chatting with that person. It's super it's not dating at all, super non-committal, but it's just been fun for that. Mm-hmm. And I think that, again, if we can step out, so I'm going to use my experience. So I was married to this person for 32 years. We dated for a year before we got married, and I got married at 21. So, do the math. I had just barely graduated from high school. I'd never lived alone. I'd always had either lived at home with my family or lived with roommates in college. And I pretty much all the way through high school had a significant boyfriend, somebody that I was dating on an active basis. So I was 15 years old, probably the last time that I actually spent a weekend alone on my own without somebody to say, do you want to go to the movies? Do you want to go out? Whatever.
Yeah.
So if you put that in context of the dating world, I think it's actually kind of foolish for us to believe that we date to find partnership. Can it be okay that we date for companionship and friendship? And is it really the best advice ever to tell somebody that it's too early for them to have companionship and friendship in their lives?
Bingo. Love it.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to start a new dating app, and it's pick your goal here. What are you looking for?
Why is that not something? Yeah.
Right.
To me, honestly, like I said, the thought of having sex with somebody that is not my ex-husband,
right,
is so beyond what my brain will allow me to get to. Mm-hmm. But I love going to yoga on Friday nights, but I know I can't do that very long. Mm-hmm. Because I miss friendship. I miss somebody else who knows me well enough to say, you really need an ice cream. Let's go for a cookie. Mm-hmm. And having somebody else that is, I don't know. But maybe it's actually, I'm saying it's kind of selfish to tell people that they're not ready to date. Maybe that's not the right thing to be telling people.
Yeah, I think it's all about what you're looking for and when is ready. Like you said, we all have things that we need to work on.
Yeah.
And so if you're not looking to get into some intense, committed, long-term relationship, if you're looking for companionship and you're looking for fun, or even if you're just looking for sex.
Yeah. Like I'm good with that. If that's something that you're needing.
Right. Can you not keep working on yourself and working on your stuff and still build connection in these other ways? And yeah, do we have a space for that? I don't know if we have a space for that. If any listeners know of an app that fits that need.
I've been looking at the Meetup app, thinking that I could do it there. But yeah, I haven't been able, so far I have not found a Meetup in Dallas, Texas that is like something like that, where, hey, we're just a group of girls. Like, I don't even care at this point if it's just a group of girls. But if you think about the middle years,
yeah.
I have a friend who 5 years ago got a divorce, and I was considering a divorce at that time. And she said that she was kind of rooting for me to get a divorce 5 years ago when she did, so that we could do it together.
I was going to say, so that she's got a divorce buddy.
I know. And like, think about it. When you're pregnant, especially if you're pregnant with your first kiddo, you're looking for other pregnant women.
Oh, yeah.
To be friends with.
All those different groups you can join and commiserate on.
Yes.
Cloth diapering and breastfeeding in the middle of the night and everything. So
yeah, but the middle years we don't divorce at the same time. We don't normally get together with our friends and say, okay, let's all get a divorce this year.
And go.
So yeah, I think we need people. And I'm almost thinking if maybe we become better companions when we actually spend time with other people, rather than like, how much good am I doing if I'm sitting here alone every weekend for 8
in your closet?
Yeah, in my closet with Jill.
I know they can't see. I know. We need to rename this podcast, In the Closet with Jill, where all the introverts go when we don't want to be out in the world doing things.
Oh, well, that's the bad thing. I'm not even an introvert. I can't even say that's me. I'm a social person. I need people, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm about to hop on a plane and fly to Texas, and we're going to go water skiing because I didn't know you did that, and I've always wanted to try. So that's wild. Anyways, listeners, I think we just gave you $1 million idea for a new app to create. So if any of you want to steal our idea, go ahead and make it. We're not going to. We don't have time for that. But let us know when you do, because yeah, people want to connect. And meetup.com, it is a good start. I did go to a meetup event. Everyone was a solid decade younger than me. And I kind of felt like the grandmother lesbian at the event. It was like, okay, very nice to meet you. I have to go home now. I'm tired.
I don't know what the answers are. All right, people.
There's no answers.
If you're in the dating world, I love you and I wish you well. If you're not yet in the dating world, I love you and I wish you well.
Yeah. And I think, you know what I'm going to do? I know we said we don't give advice, but I'm going to give some advice only from a writer's perspective, because I kind of love this. So I think on our Patreon, I'm going to put up a supplemental material about writing your dating profile and some tips on that, and also choosing what pictures to use. And again,
I love that.
This is just gathered from very unscientific, casual observation of all of the different groups I've been of people trying to date later in life and realizing some of the things that people totally rock at, and then some of the areas where it's like, oh baby, take that mouse filter off your picture. You do not look like Mickey Mouse. Like nobody wants to see you as a mouse. So anyways, okay.
Well, maybe that's your homework assignment. Write my bio.
You got it. I'm on it. She's awesome. Okay. Have a great day. Thanks for listening.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Life and Love in the Queue. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. And if you have questions, contact us at lifeandloveinthequeue@gmail.com. Until next time, Q Crew.